Something in the air feels different this week. You might not be able to name it yet, but your body knows. There is a charge beneath the surface of ordinary moments. It's a hum in the space between thoughts. A quiet knowing that the ground is shifting even when everything around you looks the same. And if you have been feeling restless, if you have been waking up at odd hours with thoughts you cannot quite catch, if something inside you keeps pulling toward a question you are not sure how to ask, then you are already tuned in to what the sky is doing right now. Because the cosmos this week is not speaking in whispers, it is speaking in thunder. It is speaking in fire. It is speaking in the kind of language that bypasses the rational mind entirely and lands straight in the center of your chest, where the truth lives before words ever reach it. On February 17th, 2026, the Sun and Moon come together at 28 degrees of Aquarius in an annular solar eclipse. And I want you to really sit with what that means, not just astronomically, but symbolically, energetically, in the felt experience of your actual life. An annular solar eclipse is different from a total solar eclipse. The moon does not fully cover the sun. Instead, it moves into alignment and leaves a ring of fire glowing around its edges, a circle of light surrounding a circle of darkness. The light does not disappear, okay? It frames the darkness. It outlines it, okay? It makes the darkness visible by surrounding it with something that cannot be extinguished, okay? And that image, that ring of fire, is the most perfect metaphor for what this eclipse is here to do in your life right now. It is not here to take away the light. It is here to show you what you have been standing in front of, what you have been blocking, what has been casting a shadow that you mistook for just the way things are. Aquarius is a sign that often gets described in terms of its intellect, its innovation, its detachment. But Aquarius is also the sign of the collective, the community, the friend group, the vision for the future. The version of yourself that you imagine when you think about who you are becoming rather than who you have been. Aquarius is ruled by both Saturn, the planet of structure and time and earned wisdom, and Uranus, the planet of awakening and disruption and the sudden truth that you cannot unsee once you have seen it. When an eclipse happens in Aquarius, it does not arrive through a slow buildup you could have prepared for. It arrives the way lightning arrives, brilliant, instantaneous, and permanently illuminating. You do not go back to the darkness after lightning. You carry the image with you. This particular eclipse is forming a tight square to Uranus, which is currently moving through Taurus. And that square, that 90-degree tension between the eclipse point and Uranus, is the signature of this entire week. A square in astrology is not a bad aspect. It is a pressure aspect. It is the kind of energy that forces something to move that has been sitting still for too long. Uranus squaring the eclipse means that the revelations of this week are not going to arrive gently. They are not going to give you a heads up. They are not going to knock politely and wait for you to answer the door. They are going to arrive the way Uranus always arrives, which is through a channel you are not watching. A conversation that starts about one thing and ends up being about everything. A text message or a phone call at an unexpected moment. A feeling that comes over you in the middle of a perfectly ordinary Tuesday afternoon that changes how you understand something you thought you already understood completely. And here is what I need you to hear about this eclipse cycle, because this is not just a single night event. The eclipse on February 17th is the opening of a brand new eclipse cycle across the Aquarius and Leo axis. This axis has not hosted eclipses since 2017 through 2019. Think back to that time in your life. I mean it. Pause for a moment and actually think back. Where were you living? Who were you loving? What were you chasing? What were you afraid of? What did you believe about yourself that you have since outgrown? The Aquarius-Leo eclipse cycle that ran through that period was one of identity and community, of figuring out who you were as an individual while also determining where you belonged collectively. For many people, that cycle brought a friendship that transformed them, or the end of one that had been silently suffocating them. For others, it brought a career shift, a relocation, a relationship that cracked them open, or a version of themselves they did not expect to meet. Whatever it was, By the time that cycle ended in 2019, you were a different person than you were when it began. And now, in 2026, a new version of that same story is beginning. Not a repeat, not a regression, but a continuation. A new chapter in the same book written by someone who has lived through everything that came between then and now. Someone who is older, wiser, and far more capable of choosing consciously rather than reacting automatically. The eclipse on the 17th is the seed point. It is the moment of planting. You may not see the shoot break through the soil this week. You may not have the full picture of what is beginning or ending until the Leo eclipse in August completes the circuit on the other end of this axis. Think of it as a thread being pulled on one end in February. The full unraveling happens over the coming months. But the thread is being pulled right now. And the question is whether you will notice which part of your life is attached to that thread before it has already shifted everything around it. This is why I want you to pay exquisite attention to the energy of February 14th through 18th, the days surrounding the eclipse. It's the conversations that happen, the information that surfaces, the feelings that show up uninvited, the realizations that come not in dramatic moments but in quiet ones. Because the quiet realizations are often the loudest ones in retrospect. Now, 3 days after the eclipse on February 20th, something happens that I believe is in many ways even more significant than the eclipse itself. Saturn and Neptune meet at 0 degrees of Aries. I want you to really feel the weight of that sentence. Saturn is the planet of structure, of time, of the bones of your life, of the commitments you have made and the rules you have followed and the reality you have been working to build piece by piece over years. Neptune is the planet of dreams, of illusion, of the way certain things can feel so real, so deeply real, that you organize your entire life around them before you ever stop to ask whether they were truly yours. And these two planets, among the slowest and most powerful in our solar system, have not been in the same place since 1989. The last time Saturn and Neptune came together, the Berlin Wall fell. Old political structures that had seemed immovable dissolved in a matter of days. An entire generation woke up to find that the boundaries they had accepted as permanent were suddenly gone, and what replaced them was not yet clear. That ambiguity, that terrifying and exhilarating space between what was and what would be, that is the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And this time they are meeting at 0 degrees of Aries, 0 Aries, the very first degree of the very first sign of the entire zodiac. Astrologers call this the world point. It is the degree associated with events and energies that ripple outward far beyond the personal. It is the cosmic reset button. When two of the heaviest planets in our solar system converge at the world point, the message is not subtle. Something old is ending. Something new is beginning. And the transition between those two states is not a clean line. It is a threshold. It is the kind of space where you can feel both the old and the new simultaneously, where the map you have been using no longer matches the territory you are standing in, but the new map has not yet been printed. That disorientation you might be feeling right now, that sense of things being slightly out of focus, of familiar things feeling unfamiliar, of certainty slipping just slightly out of your grip, that is not something going wrong. That is the Saturn-Neptune conjunction doing exactly what it is here to do. It is dissolving the illusions. Not to leave you with nothing, but to clear the space so that what is actually real can finally take root. The sign of Aries adds its own unmistakable energy to all of this. Aries is the sign of the self, the initiator. It's the one who says, I am, the one who does not wait for permission to begin, the one whose greatest power and greatest challenge is the same thing, the willingness to act before all the information is in. Aries does not circle the perimeter. Aries walks straight through the door. And so Saturn and Neptune meeting in Aries is the universe asking you the most Aries question of all, which is simply this: who are you? Not who were you told to be. Not who did you become because the alternative felt too dangerous or too unfamiliar. Not who does your family recognize. Who does your history explain? Who does your fear protect? Who are you? the real you. The one underneath the adaptations. The one underneath the performance. The one who shows up in the moments when no one is watching and the pressure to be a certain thing dissolves entirely. That is the self that Saturn and Neptune in Aries are asking to step forward. And this week, with the eclipse already cracking things open and the Saturn-Neptune conjunction pulling the fog away from corners of your life where illusion has been standing in for truth, that self has a chance to finally breathe. Mercury and Venus are both traveling through Pisces this week, and their presence adds a quality to all of this that is worth naming. Mercury in Pisces means your rational mind is swimming, not broken, not failing, just moving differently. The part of you that usually processes in linear steps and clear categories is instead moving in currents and impressions and feelings that arrive before their explanations do. You might find yourself knowing something before you can prove it. You might find yourself unable to articulate why something feels wrong or why something feels right, even when the feeling is entirely clear. This is not a malfunction, says Mercury in Pisces, asking you to trust the intelligence that lives beneath language, the intelligence of the body, the intelligence of intuition, the intelligence that does not need a logical argument to know what is true. Venus in Pisces softens every edge this week. Even when the eclipse is illuminating something sharp, something painful, something you have been not quite looking at for longer than you want to admit, Venus in Pisces reminds you that truth can arrive with compassion. That release can be gentle even when it is also real. That the love underneath a difficult conversation or a hard realization does not disappear just because the conversation is hard or the realization is difficult. Venus in Pisces is the hand that reaches for you when you are in the middle of something that asks too much of you. It is the reminder that even in weeks as cosmically active as this one, the undercurrent is love. The universe is not trying to break you. It is trying to bring you closer to something real. Jupiter is in Cancer and in retrograde, and it is sitting in a trine to Mercury this week. That retrograde Jupiter in Cancer is gently, persistently asking you to look inward, to revisit what home actually means to you. Not the address, not the building, but the felt experience of safety and belonging and nourishment that the word home is supposed to point to. The trine to Mercury means that this is a week where looking inward is not just suggested, it is unusually productive. The answers to questions you have been carrying are closer than usual this week. They are rising up from somewhere beneath conscious thought, surfacing in the quiet moments, appearing in the things you notice and the things you feel and the things that move through you when you give them space to do so. Mars is also in Aquarius, and Mars is conjunct the eclipse itself. This is significant. Mars conjunct the eclipse means there is fuel here. There is urgency here. There is a fire beneath whatever this eclipse is illuminating that wants to move, that wants to act, that does not want to simply observe and process. You might feel a restlessness this week that is almost physical. A desire to do something decisive, to make a move, to say the thing, to end something that has been quietly over for a long time, to start something that you have been circling forever. And here is what I want to say about that impulse. It might be exactly right. Mars conjunct the eclipse in Aquarius is not irrational energy. It is catalytic energy. The difference between acting from this energy in a way that serves you versus a way that creates more chaos is simply this. Let the eclipse show you what is real first. Let the information arrive. Let the realization land. Let the truth surface and then move. Because the difference between reacting to a disruption and responding to a revelation is significant. One comes from being caught off guard. The other comes from being awake. And this week is asking you to be awake. Pluto in early Aquarius is sitting quietly in the background of this eclipse, and I use the word quietly, loosely, because nothing Pluto does is truly quiet. Pluto is the planet of irreversible transformation, of death and rebirth, of the things that leave your life not temporarily but permanently. and the things that enter with the weight of inevitability behind them. With Pluto in Aquarius for this long journey through this sign, the collective is being fundamentally restructured. The systems, the communities, the networks, the technologies that define how human beings connect with each other are undergoing a transformation so deep that we will only fully understand it in retrospect. But on a personal level, Pluto conjunct the eclipse means that whatever this eclipse is activating in your chart is not a small thing. This is not a surface adjustment. What leaves? If something leaves because it has served its purpose completely. What enters has the quality of destiny about it, not in a fatalistic way, but in the way that certain things feel right, in a way that bypasses all argument and just is. Now I want to walk with you through what this week feels like in the most personal corners of your life. Because cosmic weather like this does not arrive the same way for everyone. The room it enters depends on your chart, on your rising sign, on where Aquarius and Aries fall in the architecture of your own sky. And I want to speak to each of you as directly as I can. Because this week deserves that specificity, that intimacy, that recognition that you are not a general type, but a specific person with a specific story in a specific moment of that story. If you carry the energy of Scorpio in your chart, this eclipse is landing in one of the most intimate and profound areas of your life, the house of deep partnership, of the people you merge with at a soul level, the relationships that go beyond surface and into the territory of real vulnerability and real stakes. You might find yourself looking at a dynamic you have been tolerating, not because it is working, but because examining it honestly would require changing it. The truth is coming this week, Scorpio, and it might arrive through a conversation you did not plan for or a realization that surfaces in the middle of something ordinary. Your capacity for transformation is legendary, and this eclipse is asking you to apply that capacity not to the world around you, but to the most intimate circle of your life. You are not betraying anyone by choosing what is actually real. For Aquarius, this eclipse is happening in your own sign, at a late degree of your first house of identity and self-image, and the way you move through the world as yourself. When an eclipse happens in your own sign, it reaches the root of your sense of self. Who you think you are and who the world sees when it looks at you, and the distance between those two things becomes impossible to ignore this week. Mars is right there with the eclipse, adding urgency and fire to this identity question. You want to be seen as you actually are. You want to stop performing versions of yourself that no longer fit. And Uranus squaring from your fourth house of home and roots means this shift might begin not in your public life, but in the most private and foundational parts of your world. Something in your home, your family, your inner life is shifting the way you understand yourself. Let it. If Taurus is your anchor, Uranus has been in your sign for years now, reshaping your sense of stability and security in ways that have sometimes felt anything but stable and secure. This eclipse falls in your 10th house of career and public life and legacy and the mark you are making in the world. Something in your professional direction is cracking open this week. And because Uranus is in your first house squaring the eclipse, you are at the very center of this tension. But here is what tension is for. It is the pressure that creates the diamond. It is the resistance that builds the muscle. What is being asked of you professionally right now is not to collapse under the pressure, but to use it to clarify what you are actually building and why. Jupiter retrograde in your third house is also asking you to reconsider how you have been communicating your vision. Have you been speaking your truth about what you want or performing a version of ambition that someone else handed you? Leo, this eclipse sits directly across from your sign, and that means your 7th house of partnerships and significant others is under the cosmic spotlight. The Aquarius and Leo axis is your axis, and this new eclipse cycle beginning now will spend the next 18 months reshaping your understanding of what you need from others and what others actually need from you. A moment of clarity is coming about a specific relationship or about your relationship with relationships in general. The question the eclipse is asking you is both simple and enormous. Are the people closest to you walking beside you, or are you carrying them? Are they lifting your light or dimming it because your brightness makes them uncomfortable? Leo, your generosity is one of the most beautiful things about you. But generosity that costs you your own truth is not generosity anymore. It is sacrifice without consent. The ring of fire in the sky is your image this week. Even when something blocks your radiance, the glow does not disappear. Trust that. Virgo, your 6th house is where this eclipse lands. In the territory of your daily life, your routines, your habits, your health, and the invisible and often unrecognized labor that you pour into maintaining everything around you. Something in this area of your life is ready to be released and rebuilt. Maybe it is a routine that no longer fits who you are becoming. Maybe it is a relationship with your own body that has been shaped more by discipline than by care. And with a total lunar eclipse coming in your sign in just a few weeks, on March 3rd, this week is only the opening act of a much larger and more personal story for you. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction landing in your 8th house means that shared resources and the emotional contracts beneath your closest relationships are being restructured. Your instinct is to fix everything at once, Virgo, to see all the problems and address them simultaneously and perfectly. But this week is asking you to let the chaos show you where to look first rather than trying to manage everything at once. Gemini, the eclipse activates your 9th house this week, the house of beliefs and philosophies, and the larger frameworks through which you understand your place in the world. Something you have built your worldview around might suddenly feel less solid, less certain, less self-evident than it did just last month. A belief you inherited rather than chose. A spiritual framework you adopted without fully examining. A plan connected to travel or education or an expanded version of your life might shift dramatically. Uranus, squaring from your 12th house, adds subconscious depth to all of this. The insight that moves you this week might not come through conscious reasoning. It might come through a dream or a sudden recognition or a sentence that someone says in passing that lands like lightning in your chest. Mercury, your ruling planet, is in Pisces and trining Jupiter, which means your intuition is unusually precise right now, even when your rational mind feels foggy. Not everything needs to make logical sense to be true. Trust what you know before you know how you know it. Cancer, your 8th house is where this eclipse lands, in the deep territory of shared intimacy and hidden truths, and the resources and emotional bonds that tie you to other people at a foundational level. Something beneath the surface of a significant relationship or a financial situation is rising to visibility this week. Jupiter retrograde in your own sign has already been asking you to reconsider what growth really means for you, to look inward and assess what you have been expanding toward and whether it still reflects what you truly want. The eclipse adds urgency and precision to that question. And the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in your 10th house is doing something significant to your relationship with ambition. A dream you have been holding professionally is either about to crystallize into something real or reveal itself as something you have been chasing out of habit rather than desire. Either way, the clarity that comes this week is a gift, even if it arrives wearing the temporary disguise of disappointment. Sagittarius, your 3rd house is where this eclipse falls. In the territory of daily communication and the conversations that shape your mental landscape and the stories you tell yourself and others about who you are and what your life means. A conversation this week could genuinely change the trajectory of your year. Not a grand philosophical debate, but an ordinary exchange that carries within it an extraordinary amount of weight. Maybe you finally say the thing you have been holding back because saying it would require acknowledging something you have been avoiding. Maybe someone says something to you that rewrites a story you have been carrying since far earlier in your life than you want to admit. Uranus squaring from your 6th house means your body is also sending signals this week. Pay attention to your physical energy, to what drains you and what fills you, because the body knows things before the mind catches up. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction in your 5th house is asking you to get honest about your creative and romantic life. Which dreams in those areas are still alive in you? And which have you been maintaining on life support out of nostalgia rather than genuine desire? Libra, this eclipse falls in your 5th house, the house of joy and self-expression and romance and creativity, and the things you do purely because they make you feel alive. Something in this area of your life is either beginning or completing in a way that carries real emotional weight. A romantic connection might suddenly intensify or just as suddenly reveal that it has run its course. A creative project might clarify its true purpose. Uranus, squaring from your 8th house, adds financial and depth-level undertones to this shift. Pay attention to any shared resources connected to romantic or creative partnerships, because the eclipse might surface something about those dynamics that changes your approach entirely. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction in your 7th house is the most significant transit for you personally this week, asking the most foundational question about commitment and partnership. What does it mean to truly build something with another person? And are the people you have chosen to build with actually aligned with who you are becoming? Capricorn, the eclipse falls in your 2nd house this week. In the territory of your relationship with money and with your own value and with what you are worth. Not just financially, but in the deepest sense of what you deserve and what you accept in exchange for what you offer. Mars conjunct the eclipse here gives you a fighting spirit, a refusal to settle for less than what is genuinely yours. An impulse to renegotiate the terms of things that have not been fair for longer than you have allowed yourself to admit. Uranus squaring from your 5th house means the disruption might come through a creative risk or through a development in your personal life that forces you to reconsider your financial strategy. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction in your 4th house is asking questions about the very foundation you are building from. The things you have assumed were solid, the structures you have taken for granted, the familial or historical inheritance that has shaped your blueprint. All of it is being examined this week. Capricorn, you build empires, and this week is asking you to check whether the ground beneath your empire is what you think it is. Pisces, Mercury and Venus are both in your sign this week, and that means you are feeling everything at a volume that is higher than usual. Every impression lands more deeply. Every conversation carries more resonance. Every feeling is more insistent, more present, more impossible to intellectualize your way past. The eclipse activates your 12th house, the most hidden and most spiritual space in your entire chart. Something is ending behind the scenes, something you may not even be fully conscious of yet. An old fear that has been running in the background, an old pattern that has been shaping your choices without your full awareness. An old version of yourself that has been lingering past its time like a guest who stayed too long after the party ended. And with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction happening in your 2nd house, your relationship with your own resources, with money, with the material foundation of your life, and most profoundly with your own linked planet, and what you deserve is being rebuilt from the ground up. Neptune is your ruling planet. Watching it meet Saturn at the world point this week is like watching the part of you that dreams shake hands with the part of you that builds. Something beautiful is trying to become real in your life, Pisces. Let it. And then there is Aries. Aries, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is happening in your 1st house, in your sign. Directly on the territory of your own identity and your sense of self, and the way you inhabit your own life. And I want to speak very directly here because this is a once-in-a-lifetime transit. Saturn and Neptune will not meet in Aries again in your lifetime. This is the only time this will happen for you. Which means whatever is shifting in your understanding of yourself right now, whatever is dissolving about the image of yourself that you have been projecting, whatever is taking root in terms of a more honest and more fully inhabited version of who you are, this is not a rehearsal. This is the real thing. You might feel like two different people this week. The one who wants to leap forward with total confidence, and the one who is not sure enough of the ground yet to take the step. Both of those versions of you are valid and real and worthy of being heard. The eclipse in your 11th house might shift a friendship or remove someone from your circle who was never truly aligned with where you were going. Trust the clearing. The universe is not taking things from you this week. It is creating the space where what actually belongs to you can finally arrive. Everything that is happening this week, It's the annular solar eclipse in Aquarius on the 17th. It's the Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 Aries on the 20th. Uranus squaring the eclipse from Taurus, Pluto sitting in Aquarius. Mercury and Venus moving through Pisces, Jupiter retrograde in Cancer. Mars conjunct the eclipse. All of it together creates what astrologers recognize as a rare moment of compressed cosmic meaning. It's the kind of week that when you look back on it from a year from now, from 5 years from now, you will understand as one of the hinges. It's one of the turning points. It's one of the weeks where the direction of something genuinely changed. Not because you were powerless and the planets made it happen to you, but because the sky created conditions in which the truth became undeniable, and you made choices, conscious choices, that came from seeing clearly rather than from the fog of habit and assumption and inherited pattern. The ring of fire that appears in the sky on February 17th is an image worth carrying with you through this whole week and beyond. Light surrounding darkness. Not absence of light, but light framing what is dark, making it visible, refusing to abandon it even while it is obscured. This is what the best weeks in our lives do. They do not remove difficulty or complexity or the genuine uncertainty of being a human being in a particular moment in history. They illuminate. They show us what was always there, what we were not quite ready to see, what we needed to see before the next chapter could begin. And that illumination, even when it is unsettling, even when it asks more of us than we expected to give this week, is ultimately an act of profound kindness from a universe that has not stopped caring about your becoming. Whatever this week moves in your life, whatever it surfaces or shifts or suddenly makes undeniably clear, the invitation is the same for all of us. Stay awake to it. Do not rush to normalize or explain or manage. Let the eclipse do its work. Let the Saturn-Neptune conjunction do its dissolving. Let the truth that surfaces this week be the truth that guides your next move rather than the assumption you were already carrying, because you did not end up watching this video by accident. The fact that this message reached you at this moment is already part of the story the cosmos is telling. Something in you was already leaning toward clarity. Something in you was already ready for this. And the sky enormous and patient and precise in ways that still astonish me after all these years of watching it. The sky is simply confirming what your soul has known for a long time. That you are ready for more. That the next chapter is not something that is happening to you from the outside. It is something that is happening through you from the inside out into the world. Trust what is unfolding. Trust who you are in the middle of becoming. The ring of fire is in the sky. The light is not gone. It is framing everything that comes next.